The fly. Before Brundlefly starts crawling on walls like a software bug that learned biology, Seth Brundle is already the problem. He is brilliant, lonely, and charismatic, but he is also completely convinced that his own genius makes him untouchable. His teleportation pods are a scientific breakthrough, yet instead of taking his time and being careful, Seth rushes forward because he believes he is in control. Then his arrogance turns into recklessness. After getting jealous and drunk, Seth decides to test the machine on himself without thinking it through. A tiny housefly accidentally enters the pod with him, and the machine does not simply teleport them, it combines them. Human and insect become one terrible experiment. At first, Seth sees the transformation as an upgrade. He becomes stronger, faster, and filled with a new sense of confidence. He acts like he has unlocked the next stage of human evolution. But as his body begins to deteriorate, he refuses to accept the truth. Rather than admitting something has gone horribly wrong, Seth convinces himself that he is becoming something better. That denial is what truly creates Brundlefly. The monster is not born because a fly attacked him. It is born because Seth's pride keeps him moving forward. He ignores Veronica's warnings, continues experimenting, and eventually tries to force her into his transformation, so he does not have to face it alone. By the end, Brundlefly may be the creature everyone fears, but Seth Brundle is the one who created him. His intelligence built the machine, his arrogance made him use it, and his refusal to stop turned a scientific accident into a tragedy. The real villain was Seth, long before he became the monster. Splice. Splice starts with two scientists, Clive and Elsa, making the most classic horror movie mistake possible. Being told not to do something and immediately deciding to do it anyway because they believe their intelligence puts them above the rules. Ethics apparently are just a minor inconvenience when you have a breakthrough to chase. Their secret experiment leads to Dren, a human-animal hybrid who grows quickly, learns quickly, and almost immediately proves this was a project that never should have left the drawing board. At first, Dren seems like the monster. Her appearance is unnatural, her movements are animalistic, and as she becomes more human, it somehow makes her even more unsettling. The horror comes from not knowing exactly what she is. But Dren never chose to be created. Clive and Elsa brought her into existence in secret, lied about her, experimented on her, hid her from the world, and constantly changed how they treated her whenever she became difficult or inconvenient.
What do you want me to call her?
Dren.
When they move her from the lab into a barn, the experiment stops feeling like a scientific project and starts feeling like a deeply dysfunctional family. Elsa treats Dren like a daughter when it suits her, and a lab specimen when it does not. Clive understands the situation is spiraling out of control, but he lacks the courage to walk away and continues enabling it. By the time Dren becomes violent, the tragedy has already been written into her existence. She was created without consent, raised in isolation, treated as both a child and an experiment, and abandoned whenever her creators were afraid of what they had made. Dren may be the creature everyone fears, but Splice makes it clear that the real monsters are Clive and Elsa, the people who created life, played with it, and refused to accept responsibility for the consequences. Frankenstein. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein gives us a creature made from death, but the real horror begins with Victor Frankenstein himself. He is brilliant, grieving, and obsessed with overcoming the limits of nature. He believes his intelligence gives him the right to cross boundaries no one else would dare touch. The creature may be the one people fear, but Victor is the one who chose to bring him into the world. At first, the creature is not a monster in the way people expect. He is like a newborn, confused, powerful, and trapped inside a body he never asked for. He reaches out for connection and understanding, only to be met with fear and disgust from the very person who created him. That is where the true tragedy begins. Victor wants the glory of creating life, but he refuses to accept the responsibility that comes with it. He gives the creature consciousness without guidance, emotion without comfort, and suffering without any way to understand it. When the creature eventually becomes dangerous, it is not because he was born evil. It is because he was created, rejected, and left completely alone by the person who should have cared for him most. Everyone sees the creature as the monster because his appearance is frightening, But the film's deeper horror is Victor Frankenstein's failure as a creator. He chases the power of playing God, abandons the life he made, and leaves his creation to suffer the consequences of an ambition that was never truly about love. It was about himself. The Black Phone. The Black Phone sells itself as a ghost story, and for about 10 minutes, it lets you believe that. Finney wakes up in a concrete basement with a disconnected black phone bolted to the wall, no exits in sight, and Ethan Hawke pacing around upstairs in a mask that looks like a discount serial killer starter pack. Here's the twist the trailer keeps quiet. The phone is on his side. So are the dead kids. They're the only thing keeping him alive. The actual villain is the Grabber, a child killer who's turned his basement into a private hunting ground. He skips the claws, the curse, and the demonic growl entirely. His whole arsenal is a van, a mask, a deadbolt, and enough patience to make every quiet street corner feel like a setup. He's scarier than any monster because you've technically met him. Then the phone rings. One by one, the boys he already murdered start calling Finney from the other side, and they give him exactly what they figured out too late. Where to dig, how to hide the cable, which wall is the weakest, how to fight back.
Hello?
That's what flips the whole movie. The supernatural part isn't the haunting, it's the rescue plan. These ghosts didn't come back to terrorize Finney, they came back to coach him. By the end, he's taken every lesson and weaponized it, turning the basement from a death trap into a trap with a very different guest of honor. The phone looks cursed, the kids sound like nightmares, but the genuinely terrifying thing in this movie is the regular guy upstairs with a boring name and a completely legal van. Candyman. Candyman gives you the hook, the bees, the mirror ritual, and Tony Todd staring like he already knows exactly what happens next. On the surface, he looks like the monster. A supernatural figure with a blade for a hand, summoned by saying his name 5 times. But Helen's investigation doesn't begin with the ghost. It begins with Cabrini Green, rumors, murders, and a community that the outside world keeps treating like a scary story instead of a place where real people live. When Candyman finally appears, the film leans into the fear. He is terrifying, and he does horrific things, framing Helen, destroying her reputation, and turning a local myth into something physical and unavoidable. For a while, it really does feel like he is the source of everything going wrong. Then the story reveals what created him. Daniel Robitaille was a talented black artist hired to paint a wealthy white man's daughter. When they fell in love, it triggered violent racism. A mob hunted him down, cut off his hand, coated him in honey, and left him to be stung to death by bees while they watched. That's the turning point of the film. Candyman may be the ghost people fear, but he didn't create the violence that defines him. He was created by it. The horror doesn't begin with the hook or the mirror ritual. It begins with the mob that turned a man into a legend built from suffering. Candyman is the myth. The men who murdered Daniel Robitaille are the real source of the horror. Train to Busan. Train to Busan throws zombies onto a speeding train, then somehow makes the most dangerous thing on board a man in a business suit. The infected are terrifying in their own right. They sprint, crash into glass doors, and turn each carriage into a collapsing wave of bodies and panic. But the zombies are not making moral choices. Yeon Suk is. Seok Woo, Soo-an, Sang-hwa, and the other survivors are forced to fight their way through the train car by car, and every time they get close to safety, Yeon Suk is there to make survival harder. He isn't bitten, and he isn't infected. He's just selfish and fully aware of it. The clearest break comes when the group finally reaches other passengers, exhausted and barely holding on. Instead of letting them in, Yeon-suk turns fear into control and convinces everyone to lock the doors. The danger is behind them, but the real betrayal happens right in front of them. From there, it only gets worse. He pushes others into danger, uses people as shields, and sacrifices anyone near him if it means buying himself a little more time. By the end, his behavior mirrors the outbreak itself, spreading fear, chaos, and death from person to person. That's what makes Yeon-suk more unsettling than the infected. The zombies lose their humanity the moment they're turned. Yeon-suk keeps his, and still chooses to act like this anyway. The Mist. A strange white fog rolls over a small Maine town after a violent storm, and it's quickly clear this isn't ordinary weather. Something else came with it. Inside the mist are massive insects, tentacled creatures, and winged predators. David and the others end up trapped inside a supermarket, which at first feels like the perfect survival shelter. Food, light, locked doors, other people. Then the fog proves it isn't just hiding things, it's hunting. A man is dragged away near the loading dock, creatures slam against the glass, and the store transforms into a pressure cooker of panic. Fear spreads quickly, but at this stage, it's still just fear. Then Mrs. Carmody starts speaking. At first, she seems like an unsettling but harmless presence, someone you'd quietly avoid in the grocery aisle because she talks like she already knows you. But as the attacks continue, her influence grows. She gives the fear direction, gives the chaos meaning, and gives people permission to turn on each other.
Ain't his fault.
By the time she demands sacrifice, the monsters outside almost feel simpler. They kill because they are predators. Mrs. Carmody turns suffering into doctrine. She reacts to fear, organizes it, weaponizes it, and turns ordinary people into something far more dangerous than anything in the mist.
We want the boy.
The Ring. Ringu, the Japanese version of The Ring, introduces one of horror's most efficient cursed objects, a videotape that kills anyone who watches it within 7 days. The moment it ends, the phone rings, just to confirm the countdown has already begun. At first, Sadako feels like the source of the horror. She crawls out of screens, turning television into a death sentence. It's the kind of idea that permanently changes how you look at static and VHS tapes. But Reiko's investigation starts pulling the story backward. Sadako wasn't born as some random evil spirit. Her mother, Shizuko Yamamura, was a psychic whose abilities were exploited by Dr. Akuma. He placed her in front of the public to prove her powers were real. When a reporter called it fraud, the shame destroyed her, and she eventually walked into the volcano she had once predicted. Then the truth of Sadako's fate comes into focus. Akuma struck her down and threw her into a well, sealing it afterward. She didn't die quickly. She survived for a time in total darkness before finally succumbing, and that suffering becomes the foundation of the curse. The tape is where her rage finally finds a way to spread. Sadako is the face of the curse, but Dr. Akuma is the reason it exists at all. He is the one who set everything in motion and turned a human life into something that could never stay buried. Barbarian. Tess arrives at her Detroit rental on a rainy night only to discover Keith already staying there. He seems awkward, polite, and just suspicious enough to make everyone watching think, get out of there immediately. He's the movie's first big red herring.
303
303 509.
It's the same one.
The next morning, Tess accidentally gets locked in the basement and discovers a hidden room. A camera, a stained mattress, a secret tunnel. Suddenly, the question is no longer, can Keith be trusted? But who built this place, and why? Keith follows her underground and ends up trapped with her. Then, without warning, a massive deformed woman known as the Mother bursts out of the darkness and violently kills him. At this point, the Mother seems like the monster of the story. Mystery solved. Or at least that's what the movie wants us to think. 2 weeks later, Tess is revealed to still be alive beneath the house. AJ, the property owner, arrives after a sexual assault allegation destroys his career. He discovers the same tunnel system, gets trapped underground, and reunites with Tess. While she focuses on escaping, AJ's curiosity leads him even deeper into the tunnels, where he finds a room even the Mother is afraid to enter. Inside, AJ finds Frank, an elderly man confined to a bed and surrounded by videotapes documenting decades of horrific crimes, kidnapping women, abusing them, and turning the underground tunnels into a prison. This revelation changes everything. The Mother is not simply a monster, she is a victim. She is the product of generations of abuse, captivity, and inbreeding caused by Frank. She appears to be the villain because she kills Keith, but the true source of the horror has been there all along. The film's final twist is not about a creature hiding in the dark, it's about the men who created and continued the cycle of harm. AJ proves he is no different from Frank's selfish cruelty when he shoots Tess and later throws her off a water tower to save himself. Yet the mother, despite everything she has endured, leaps after Tess and cushions her fall. Hereditary. Hereditary has a demon at the center of its story, but it is much more than a typical possession movie. The true horror begins long before anyone in the Graham family realizes what is happening. When their grandmother Ellen dies, everyone treats it like a normal, tragic loss. That is the first mistake. Ellen was not just a strange old woman with unsettling friends. She was the one who set everything in motion. After her funeral, the Graham family begins to unravel one horrifying event at a time. Charlie dies in an accident so shocking that it makes the entire movie feel cursed, leaving Peter trapped with a level of guilt that follows him through every moment afterward. At first, it looks like grief is the enemy. Annie falls apart, Steve desperately tries to hold the family together, and Peter starts experiencing things no one else can explain. But when Annie discovers Ellen's old books, strange symbols, photographs, and evidence of her connection to a secret cult, the story changes. This was never just a family suffering through bad luck. It was a plan that had been unfolding for years. By the final act, the horrifying truth becomes clear. Ellen and her cult were never trying to protect or mourn the family. They were sacrificing them. Charlie was never meant to be the final vessel. From the very beginning, Peter was the body they intended to prepare for Paimon. So yes, Paimon is the demon behind the events of Hereditary. But Ellen is the true villain. She sacrificed her own family as part of a ritual, manipulated generations of her bloodline, and allowed their grief and suffering to become the tools that completed her plan.